Hello, Mountain View kids and families. This is Mrs. Martha coming to you with this Sunday's Sunday School lesson. This lesson is for June 14th, 2020, which happens to be Flag Day. So I hope you're wearing your patriotic shirts today, and we can celebrate this day when we honor our flag. I want to thank you for watching my YouTube videos. Remember to like and subscribe and share these videos on our Mountain View Kids Fontana YouTube channel. And I appreciate those of you that have been watching my videos. Remember that you can always email me at kids@mvucc.org to get on my mailing list, and that way you'll get my weekly email with all of the downloads that I'm going to be talking about in each lesson. And remember, you can always go on Cokesbury Kids. On Sunday mornings, they have a live Facebook Sunday school lesson, and this is the company that does the curriculum that I'm using for my Sunday school lesson, which is the Deep Blue Kids One Room Sunday School. I mentioned last week, and please remember that for the summer months, I am using some older curriculum. So if you do use our Deep Blue Kids app or watch the Cokesbury Kids video, it will be a different lesson. But this is the lesson that we will be doing for June. So for our unit for June is called the Rainbow Promise, and we're talking about Noah. Our story is from Genesis chapter 7, verses 1 through 16. Genesis is the very first book of the Bible in what we call the Old Testament, which talks about the Jewish people before the time that Jesus came. Our Bible verse for the month of June is Genesis 9:17, and it says, "This is a symbol of the covenant that I have set up between me and all creatures on earth." And that's from Genesis 9:17. And he's talking there about the rainbow. And we're going to be talking about that in a couple weeks. We're not quite there in our Noah story yet, but we will be talking about what he means by a covenant and all of that in a couple weeks. Now, hopefully you watched my video from last week about the first part of our Noah story, but just in case you didn't get it, Noah was a man who lived in about the year 2466 BC. So that's about 4,500 years ago. That's a really long time ago. Remember, this is way at the beginning of the Bible. And when Noah was about 500 years old, God came to him and told him to build this giant ark. It's a giant boat. And that was because God had created man, and when he created them, he declared them to be good. But man had become so evil and sinful that God was actually sorry he created people, and he decided that he was just going to get rid of all the people on earth and start over again. But he saw that Noah was a good man and his family, and so he decided that he was going to save Noah and some of the animals on the earth from this flood that he was going to send. And so he came to Noah and he told Noah to build a giant ark. And this was a huge boat. It was about 450 feet long, which is about a football field and a half. So if you can imagine how big a football field is, that plus another half. It was huge. 45 feet tall, which is about 4.5 stories, if you think of like a multi-story building. And it had 3 decks, each about 15 feet tall. And this was big enough to put in 2 pairs of each kind of animal, and Noah and his family, plus all the food and water they would need. They ended up spending almost a year on the ark, so they needed a lot of food and water. But the ark was big enough to hold all of that. So I'm going to start reading our story today. Our story is called Two of Every Kind, and we'll be talking about the animals that came onto the ark. And I'm reading from the International Children's Bible here, and this is a version that's a little bit easier for kids to understand, and I'm starting in Genesis chapter 7, verses 1 through 16. Then the Lord said to Noah, "I have seen that you are the best man among the people of this time. So you and your family go into the boat. Take with you 7 pairs, each male with its female of every kind of clean animal, and take 1 pair, that's 2 animals, each male with its female of every kind of unclean animal." Now we usually think that were only 2 animals of each species in the ark, but God actually said to take 7 pairs, so that's 14 animals, of what he calls clean animals. Now, he's not talking about dirty and clean. He's talking about animals that Noah and his family would use to sacrifice to God. Remember, back in those days, people made animal sacrifices to God as a way of showing they were sorry for doing things. And so these animals that they would sacrifice might be sheep or goats or cattle. Those were the usual things. Some kinds of birds they would sacrifice as well. And so God wanted 7 pairs of those so that his family would have enough animals so they could sacrifice them, as well as the animals would be able to grow again once the earth was done with the flood. So 7 pairs of clean animals and 2 pairs of what he called unclean animals. Remember, that's not dirty. That just means animals that we didn't sacrifice. So he says, take 7 pairs of all the birds of the sky, each male with its female. This will allow all these animals to continue living on the earth after the flood. So 7 pairs also of all the birds. And birds are pretty small, so they could fit them all into the ark. 7 days from now, I will send rain on the earth. It will rain 40 days and 40 nights. I will destroy from the earth every living thing that I made. Now, it took Noah probably about 118 years to build this ark, based on some of the sources I have. And actually, when Noah started building the ark, his sons were not even born yet. We kind of think of Noah and all his sons building it together, but actually Noah started this by himself. So when God came to him and told him to build this ark and that he and his family would be saved, God was talking about Noah's sons and his sons' wives who weren't even born yet. So that's kind of amazing that Noah just believed him and obeyed him and trusted that God's word would come true. So you can imagine if your neighbors started building a giant ark in their backyard, it wouldn't even fit. But you think people would notice that. And yet in these 118 years, not one person, even if they asked Noah about it, not even one person decided that they needed to follow God. God gave them 118 years to get right with him, and not one person did. And so at this point, God, now that Noah has finished building the ark, and God says, in 1 week, I'm going to start this. He was giving them 1 more week that anybody could come to God. And still, nobody did. It says in verse 5, Noah did everything that the Lord commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the flood came. Now, that sounds really old to us, and it is. But we have to remember, in Bible times, at the very beginning of the Bible times, people lived much longer than they do today. After the flood, actually, people started living what we consider a more normal lifespan. But back then, people lived a very long time. So Noah and his wife and his sons and their wives went into the boat. He had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and they each had a wife. They went in to escape the waters of the flood. The clean animals, the unclean animals, the birds, and everything that crawls on the ground came to Noah. So Noah didn't have to run around and try to get these animals to come. The animals came by themselves to the ark and got on the ark. They went into the boat in groups of 2, male and female. This was just as God had commanded Noah. Now we can think, we've got all these animals. People think that probably, like when it came to the big animals like elephants and giraffes, probably it was younger animals that are smaller. So maybe not full-grown animals, but a little bit smaller ones, for a couple of reasons. First of all, they're smaller, they take up less room and eat less food, and also once the flood was over, then the animals would have a longer time to live and have babies and be able to repopulate the earth with their animals. So all these animals came by themselves to the ark. 7 days later, the flood started. Noah was now 600 years old. The flood started on the 17th day of the 2nd month of that year. That day, the underground springs split open, and the clouds in the sky poured out rain. The rain found the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. So they say not only did the rain come down from the sky, but underground springs of water. We know that there's water in the earth. When we drill a well, we go down to these underground springs, and they say all of those opened up and water came out. So water came out from the ground as well as rain everywhere. On that same day, Noah and his wife, his sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives went into the boat. They had every kind of wild animal and tame animal. There was every kind of animal that crawls on the earth. Every kind of bird was there. They all came to Noah in the boat in groups of 2. There was every creature that had the breath of life. One male and one female of every living thing came. It was just as God had commanded Noah. Then the Lord closed a door behind them. So the ark had one door, a big door, and it was so big that Noah probably couldn't close it himself, and they say the hand of God actually shut them all into it. So it said wild animals and tame animals. You can imagine if you've got even a dog and a cat in your house, they don't always get along, but we believe that God caused the animals to get along. The animals were able to eat hay and grain and things like that, and not eat each other, because that wouldn't be good on the ark. So they said God actually kind of brought a peace among all the animals so that for this year, they would get along and actually eat grains and things rather than other animals. And the animals all got along on the boat. I'm sure they separated them as well, but the animals got along for this whole year. So that's the Bible story there. So the point is, first of all, Noah obeyed God long before this happened. Can you imagine God tells you to do something and it's going to take you a very long time to do? And Noah didn't question him. He just did what God asked him to do. God told Noah that his sons would be saved, and this was before he even had sons. So Noah had to believe a lot of things that hadn't happened yet, so that believe that these things would come true. And Noah believed God and obeyed him. Remember, God gave man about 118 years to repent as they saw Noah building the ark. God doesn't want anybody to die without knowing him. And that's a really important point. God gave these people many, many years, and we know lots of people heard about it, saw it. I'm sure they were talking about it. It was really a strange thing, and yet not even one person decided that they needed to believe in God with Noah. Jesus says in the book of Luke, chapter 17, verse 27, that the people were eating and drinking up to the very day that Noah entered the ark. They were just living their lives, doing what they wanted to do for all of these years. They probably even saw the animals coming and even the door shutting, and they still didn't believe in him. And Jesus says that's going to be the same thing when he comes back in the future. Could be any time now, but Jesus says that people are going to be eating and drinking and doing our normal lives, and then he's going to come back. So it's really important that in the time that God has given us, that we turn our hearts to Jesus, because he's not going to give us any warning other than what he's already given us in the Bible. We're just going to be living our lives, and one day it's going to happen. We don't know. It could be today. It could be 100 years from now. We don't know. So it's important that we live our lives and ask God in our hearts and try to live in a way that pleases God. So that's our point, our Bible point for our story today. Our crafts this week, which I will be sending in the email that you'll be getting. First is something that we call a tangram, and that looks like this. It's just some shapes. So you're going to cut out on all the lines here, and you're going to get all of these different shapes once you've cut those all out. Then on the next page, it shows you can use these tangram shapes, and you put them together, and you can make all of these animals. Well, they kind of look like animals. So I can't really do it very well holding it up to you, but I'll kind of show you how to do it. You can put them on a table, and then you can put them in a shape. So I'm going to try to put these together so that you can see one of the shapes here. I'll try to do this really fast. So you have to kind of figure out how the shapes go so that you can make the animals. So I'm going to put these two, these are a little tricky here. I'll put them like that. Okay, so I can put these two shapes like this, and then I can put a smaller shape next to it. I guess we need to start with these bigger shapes. I put these two big shapes here. I'm trying to make this giraffe here. Smaller shape here. So you kind of lay them beside each other and then on a shape, and then you can make these animals. So this is kind of a fun thing that kids like to do. I can't really do it here because I can't do it with it facing up. They'll all fall off. But you can try to make all these different shapes with your tangram. So that's kind of a fun thing to do. And the other thing that we have for you this week is I'm going to be sending you this picture of Noah. And on this page, I put the instructions on there so when you get it, you can see what to do. You're going to cut out these shapes. There are two of some kinds of animals, and then you can color this page and you can glue on the animal shapes. So you can see two of each kind of animal, well, not all of them, but a lot of these kinds of animals in your ark. So you can do that, and it's also got our Bible verse right here, so you can actually cut that out and glue that onto your ark as well, and then there's our Bible verse for the week. All right, so those are the crafts that will be coming in the email that I send you later this week. So I'm going to pray, and then we'll be done for this week's lesson. Dear Jesus, we thank you so much for this story of Noah and how it so clearly shows how much you love us and you want us all to be saved. And you give us so much time to do that, Father, and you've provided a way for that through Jesus. And I pray for each child listening and their families that they will ask you into their hearts and make you a part of their lives so that we can all be saved and be in heaven together. I thank you for your son, Jesus, and all the good things that he gives to us. I pray you will bless each of these children watching and their families during this week. In your name I pray, amen. So thank you for watching today's video. Remember, you can email me at kids@mvucc.org if you have any questions, prayer requests, anything. You can always email me and I'll get right back to you with that. And be sure to like and subscribe and share our Mountain View Kids Fontana YouTube channel. So thank you for watching and have a great day. Bye-bye.